Morning, good to have you with us on this Friday. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. We're going to start in Venezuela, where rescuers are in a race against time to find survivors trapped under mountains of rubble following Wednesday's deadly twin earthquakes. The terrifying back-to-back quakes were the most powerful to rock Venezuela in more than a century. They rocked the capital of Caracas and the coastal region north of that city. Venezuela's health minister says at least 235 people were killed and thousands injured. Thousands more are also feared to be missing in the disaster. Countries around the world are rushing to aid Venezuela, which was already weakened by economic and political turmoil. The U.S. is among those sending help. Southern Command says that its team arrived in Venezuela to help with those relief efforts. We've got a team standing by to talk about all this and so much more. We're going to kick things off with NBC News correspondent George Solis. George, good morning.
Guys, good morning. It is now a race against time. Unfortunately, that death toll, as you mentioned, continues to climb. More than 200 dead and more than 4,300 injured. The 7.2, 7.5 magnitude quake's the strongest in more than a century to hit Venezuela. We're here at the Global Empowerment Mission, where from day one now, people have been donating as much as they can. People are just compelled to help. You might be able to see some of the boxes here behind me. The question is, how is some of this aid going to get into the country with the airport damaged and closed for the time being? Now, we do know organizations from around South Florida are working with partners in the country right now to help mobilize this, but that's not the only entity doing it. The U.S. military is also saying they are going to provide humanitarian aid. U.S. Southern Command, or Southcom, says they are planning on supplying aircrafts, logistics, and critical life-saving logistics to help the people of Venezuela. And there's more than $150 million already pledged to help with recovery and rebuild efforts in the country. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez has been to some of the worst of the devastation. She says, obviously, it is rampant, and they are still trying to assess the full scope of damage. We have also spoken with survivors of the earthquake. One woman telling us that she was at the epicenter of these quakes, saying it just felt like one long continuous tremor. She recalls trying to get in a car, seeing buildings that were crumbling around her, seeing buildings that were on fire, roads that were eroded, people in the streets crying out for help. She made it safely to Caracas with her family. She was very emotional as she spoke with us because for that time being, she was not able to communicate with her family, telling us she just feels so lucky to be alive. And again, at this hour, there are rescuers coming in from around the country to help Venezuela, to help the people dig out of rubble. Some of the images that we have been seeing of people being rescued, giving some people hope that that is going to be the case for maybe those that have not been able to reach their loved one. And again, back here in South Florida, home to a very large Venezuelan community, people are going to only continue to help. The idea here is to make sure this warehouse is packed, so when these resources can get into the country, they will be ready to help those people that need it most. Back to you.
All right, George, thank you. Let's take a closer look at how the U.S. is responding to this disaster with NBC News White House reporter Catherine Doyle. So, Catherine, Southcom, that's the U.S. Southern Command, is aiding the State Department in these relief operations. What kind of support is the U.S. offering to Venezuela right now?
That's right. Good morning, Joe. So the president said that we would deploy a multi-agency response to this, and Southcom is there. They set up a command in Caracas. As George mentioned, the U.S. has pledged $150 million to this as well, and the State Department is also there working hard to make sure that the U.S. is involved and operating search and rescue operations and aiding in finding any efforts that they can.
This is, as we mentioned, a time of turmoil for Venezuela and U.S. relations. A reminder, back in January, U.S. forces captured and brought the country's then president, Nicolas Maduro, to America. With all that in mind, what's been the reaction from President Trump to this disaster, knowing America has had such a heavy hand this year when it comes to the leadership in that country?
That's right. It's a very sensitive time diplomatically between the U.S. and Venezuela, and the president touched on this. Take a listen to what he said last night in his remarks.
We took over Venezuela in less than one day, and the oil is flowing, and we're getting along with them great. We're going to, by the way, help them with they had a tremendous earthquake last night that you read about, massive in Caracas. But we're going to help them out.
For months, the U.S. has been working with Venezuela's new leader, Delcy Rodriguez. So now is really a moment when the U.S. government, the Trump administration, is going to be able to demonstrate what kind of partner it can be in these efforts and going forward.
And Catherine, for any Americans who are caught up in this catastrophe, what is the advice from the State Department? Is the U.S. Embassy still functioning there?
The embassy is operating and they're monitoring the situation. They've asked that any U.S. citizens and Americans monitor the State Department's enrollment program for Americans overseas. That will provide critical information with what's going on and allow people to keep in touch with U.S. authorities as they figure out what's next.
All right, Catherine Doyle in Washington. Catherine, thank you so much. As the international response grows in Venezuela, humanitarian groups are racing to get life-saving aid to survivors. Joining me now is Eleanor Rakes. She's Vice President for Program Delivery at the International Rescue Committee. Eleanor, good to have you with us. Your organization has been working in Venezuela for years now. I know you're scaling up your relief efforts. Just tell us what your teams are doing on the ground right now. What are the most urgent needs?
Thanks for having me. Yes, we've been working in Venezuela for many years with staff on the ground. Thankfully, the first thing we did was make sure that they were all safe and accounted for, and that is the case. We work also with 7 trusted local Venezuelan organizations, and we've been delivering humanitarian services to tens of thousands of Venezuelans over the last few years in health, nutrition, food security, protection and education. We're now mobilizing that team and our partner organizations to respond to what is obviously a very devastating set of earthquakes. It's going to have long-lasting humanitarian impact. So right now, there is an intense search and rescue operation going on, but we are also mobilizing to provide basic relief items, critical medical supplies, and deliver those supplies to frontline workers in the most affected areas. Your correspondent referenced the logistical challenges of getting supplies in right now. The airport is damaged. Fortunately, we have pre-positioned stock inside the country that we're able to resource and more stock across the border in Colombia. So we're working with what we have and working with partner organizations that already have presence in impacted areas and existing services that can now be oriented towards the relief efforts.
You mentioned the logistical challenges, and we're seeing countries from around the world, not just the U.S., helping out. The United Nations, organizations like World Central Kitchen, which always shows up during times like this, stepping in to help. How do all those efforts come together? How do you work around some of those logistical challenges you mentioned?
Yeah, it's tremendous to see the international support that's been offered and is being mobilized for Venezuela, because, this is a country that before the earthquakes hit was facing pretty significant humanitarian need. 8 million Venezuelans in need of humanitarian assistance, and people across the country were struggling to meet their basic needs even before this disaster struck. So it really does need a significant mobilization internationally, but also really working with national and local organizations inside the country that have deep knowledge of the context and communities and can mobilize support quickly. The response is going to need to be multifaceted, and right now the focus is on essential relief items: shelter, water, food, medical services, but quickly we will need to be thinking about, and we already are thinking about, how do we resource and support public services in impacted areas that were overstretched and under-resourced before this hit, and think about mental health and psychosocial support services and protection services for the very significant number of people who've been impacted directly and indirectly by the earthquake.
Those pre-earthquake challenges you mentioned, the humanitarian crisis already in place, just how much harder does that make this response?
It's a game changer. I think when you're looking at a community that has already been struggling, that then has a natural disaster. Unfortunately, this happens around the world. We have so many countries that are dealing with political, economic conflict, other forms of crisis, and then a natural disaster strikes, and they don't have the reserves and the resources on hand to respond in the way that other communities and other countries might be able to. So it is significant. On top of that, and this is always the case with an earthquake, the logistical challenges in physically accessing the area are going to be significant. So the airports obviously are one thing. Internet connectivity is down. There are other challenges to just getting supplies in and being able to respond. So that there is a lot going on here that means we are really needing to set up a robust response for these impacted people that were so vulnerable even before this hit.
Eleanor Rakes, we appreciate everything you're doing, and we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, let's now cross over to the Venezuelan capital of Caracas. Journalist Ana Vanessa Herrero is there for us again this morning. Ana, thanks for joining us. Just walk us through the situation on the ground where you are right now and give us a sense of what the last 24 hours have been like as the scale of this devastation comes into focus.
Yes, as you can see here, ongoing efforts throughout the night to try to rescue survivors who might be buried under the falling buildings. I am now in one of the affected areas in the capital city of Caracas, where family members are still here. They have not slept. They say and they tell me that they will not move until they get news from their loved ones. So as you know, as you were talking now, there are a lot of challenges, but on the ground, you can feel that so well. So behind me, you see first responders and rescue teams overwhelmed and asking themselves, when is the international aid coming? But not only the machinery or the tools that they definitely need, but also the people. They are tired. They are scared. They don't know if they can handle a situation like this. So some support and some help is more than welcome now. That is what they have been telling me here in Caracas. And this is the same feeling I get from talking to different responders, firefighters, and paramedics that are also trying to rescue people in La Guaira, in the coastal area of Venezuela.
For the rescue crews and just for everyday folks you're talking about, what are their biggest worries right now? What is it they're asking for and that they need?
They're asking for the basics because they are working with basically nothing. So yesterday they were telling people, but even family members who were there, to bring flashlights to continue the rescue operations through the night. And they're asking for gloves, for masks, helmets, whatever they can, and anyone that can come and help. That is something that they are looking for, food, even coffee, just to try to survive these hours and try to help in any way they can, of course. They're also worried that things might be taking a little bit too long to recover and to try to rescue the people that are here. But again, it's a titanic effort what this team and the volunteers are doing in Caracas and also in La Guaira.
Ana, how has the Venezuelan government, led by the interim president Delcy Rodriguez, been handling the situation so far, especially given all the challenges the country was already facing before this disaster?
Yes, well, it's very different the way they are understanding the situation now as they did in the past. For example, now they're welcoming the international aid. For many years, we didn't see that coming from the government. They immediately rejected any aid and they said they could handle. Now they acknowledge they cannot handle this tragedy. And they're not only welcoming the aid, but they're also asking the private sector to help out, to bring machinery or whatever they need to keep the search going. And now we see missions from not only the United States, but other countries, including, for example, El Salvador, which last year would have been unimaginable.
Do we know, I know it's early, just how much of that aid is getting in these early hours?
We have no confirmation of that just yet, but we do know the missions are here. We do know they're not only bringing machinery and tools, they're also bringing experts. They're bringing teams to help the teams already on the ground. And that is going to significantly change the situation, or at least that is what first responders here believe, because again, they don't only need the basics, but they also need the people, the experts, someone who can lead them into understanding a tragedy of this magnitude.
Ana Vanessa Herrera, we appreciate all of your reporting on the ground. We're thinking of you and everyone there right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Back here at home, President Trump scored two big legal victories from the Supreme Court yesterday. Both center on immigration. The first ruling allows the White House to remove legal protections from hundreds of thousands of immigrants from Haiti and Syria. That paves the way for the administration to deport people from those countries who were given what's known as temporary protected status. In another decision handed down yesterday, the divided court ruled that someone looking to enter the U.S. at the southern border cannot claim asylum while still standing on Mexican soil. Why? Because they're not technically in the United States. They must have already crossed the border to claim asylum. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris and NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley, who is in Washington. Good morning to both of you. Julia, let's start with you. This ruling that removes these legal protections, how big of a victory is this for the Trump administration? And then what kind of action could we see as a result of this decision?
It's a huge victory, Joe. It's yet another time where this Supreme Court has taken power away from federal courts and given more power to the executive branch. Because what this ultimately came down to is whether or not federal judges could tell the Trump administration, no, you're not in a position to remove these protected statuses because the conditions in the countries that you're talking about have not improved. It's still not safe to send anyone back to those countries. So right now it applies to people coming from Haiti and Syria. That's 350,000. But there have been other times where the Trump administration has tried to remove protections and been stopped, like in many of the African countries, like South Sudan, for example. There was an attempt for El Salvador. Right now, that is continuing through the fall. But there are a number that could definitely end very soon. And now that they have this new authority given them by this opinion, they can go back and try to tell those judges that those opinions that they had to block them in the first place are no longer valid, given what the Supreme Court said.
Misty, let's bring you in here. This is something we've seen before, a 6-3 vote along ideological lines. In the dissenting opinion, the liberal Justice Elena Kagan argued race was a factor for President Trump. Walk us through what the main legal arguments were here.
So in the dissent, there were three main legal arguments. The first is a narrower view of the statute at issue. And Justice Kagan in her dissent, joined by two other justices, said that the court can review at least the procedural steps that need to be taken when removing temporary protected status. So that's one argument. The other argument is that there was heavy race-based bias when removing temporary protected status, specifically with regard to Haiti. And she pointed to, in the decision, saying that there were statements made by the executive, meaning President Trump, so repellent and racially inflected that the majority declines to put them in print, speaking about the opinion that was written. And so that when making that determination with regard to Haiti, that race played a factor. And the dissent says that that was improper. And last is what we call a public policy argument, that there are real world consequences to this determination, putting people in significant risk being sent back to their countries and putting them in danger while there's a litigation playing out, and even saying that these individuals could be put on the next plane. So those were the three core arguments raised by the dissent.
Julia, let's turn to the second case where people can claim asylum, whether they are physically in the U.S. versus just right across the border. This might seem like a small change, but explain the history behind this and the impact this decision is going to have.
Well, it might not make an immediate impact on what's happening at the border, because already it's very hard for anyone to be able to cross the border and claim asylum, even if they are on U.S. ground, because of these policies the Trump administration put in on day one, even if they're claiming asylum legally at the border or between ports of entry, they've really made a huge asylum crackdown across the border. But this goes back to another policy that started almost a decade ago that said, when Trump first came into office, it said that if you were standing on the Mexican side of the border, but you could see U.S. authorities because there's really a buffer zone in many cases, or you might be walking up to a port of entry, you know, if you're in line, is that a time that you could make an asylum claim? And right now the Supreme Court is siding with that previous policy that was put in place by the first Trump administration to say, no, if you're on the Mexican side of the border, you cannot make an asylum claim. So while that may seem small and an immediately applicable process, this does have very big implications because the Trump administration over and over again has tried to curb the rights of people to claim asylum at the border, and even people who are already in the United States who are trying to claim asylum, like those people with temporary protected status now. And so this could mean when they do get a decision that they'll have to make later on about the current asylum policies, they could again side with the Trump administration and decide that this is really up to the executive branch on how it wants to determine who gets asylum at the border.
Misty, for this case, a lot of the focus is on the word arrive. And let's be clear, there's some very clear tensions here between the justices, specifically Alito and Sotomayor. Help us understand how each side saw this word, how it's used differently.
Yeah, so it's funny because when you're talking about the Supreme Court, there's so many legal technicalities that we always get into. And here, this particular decision hinges on the plain meaning of the word arrive. So the majority opinion says that arrive means what it means when you look in the dictionary, that you don't arrive somewhere until you're actually physically on U.S. soil. You don't arrive to the United States until you've actually crossed into it. So you cannot seek asylum, basically, in this process called metering that Julia just explained. People can be turned away at the border. They have not technically arrived on U.S. soil and therefore cannot seek asylum until they do so. Now, on the flip side, Justice Sotomayor in the dissent said, arriving is when you get to the place where you are seeking help. So it does not actually require stepping over that border. And those are the tensions of the two sides. Ultimately, the majority determining the word arrive means what it means in the dictionary. You don't arrive until you get there. Justice Alito saying, you know, you don't get a touchdown until you're in the end zone, to use that analogy. So it really was a decision that hinged on that plain language of the word arrive.
Julia, very, very quickly here, we have a week left expecting decisions, still some major decisions expected, including birthright citizenship, right?
Yeah, that's right. And of course, we saw a glimpse last year into how the justices were viewing birthright citizenships, saying that they couldn't knock down President Trump's executive order trying to end birthright citizenship nationally when only one district or one circuit is weighing in on that. So already seen a glimpse into their thinking, at least on the logistics of ending birthright citizenship. But now the Supreme Court will have to weigh in on whether or not it's a violation of the 14th Amendment for the president to say that only children born to U.S. citizens or people with legal permanent status here are considered U.S. citizens, because throughout much of this country's history, it has been that if you were born on U.S. soil, you are a U.S. citizen for life. This also comes as the Trump administration is ramping up efforts to denaturalize people, meaning if you became a U.S. citizen while you were here and they decide you've done that fraudulently or you've committed a crime that is egregious since then, they may have a way of denaturalizing you. So a lot of emphasis on citizenship, and it will be really interesting to see how this court weighs in on that and what they say about it.
More to come next week. Julia and Misty, thank you both. Appreciate it. Let's take a look now at your weekend forecast. Time for your morning news now weather. And Angie Lassman joins us with the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Hi, Joe. Good morning. Happy Friday. We made it. Weekend looks a little bumpy in some spots. Let's talk about where we're dealing with issues right now. That's across the middle of the country. Notice we've got that line of thunderstorms kind of working across parts of western Kentucky and Tennessee. But we've also got a whole lot of folks under flood watches. This has been kind of a rinse and repeat situation that we've seen each morning. And heading into the afternoon hours as we've kind of just got all of this moisture sliding east. 17 million people in total. Notice it goes from parts of West Virginia all the way across to Kansas and into Oklahoma, St. Louis, Springfield. You're included in that, as well as Cincinnati. So heads up in those locations. You're likely going to see some flooding as the day goes on. And here's why. We've got this area that's kind of, again, moving to the east. It does ramp up those severe storms anywhere from Kentucky stretching back to Missouri as the day gets going, and really we start to see some of that daytime heating. And then, as I mentioned, the flooding is going to be something we watch specifically across the Tennessee River Valley through the day today. Tomorrow, heading into your Saturday, your weekend plans across the mid-Atlantic could be interrupted by some of these storms that are going to work across that region through the day. And you guessed it, more flooding concerns across, again, that region here as we get to your Saturday plans. Today, though, we're focused from Joplin to Charleston, Indianapolis, Paducah, St. Louis, all included in that slight risk of flash flooding as we gear up for multiple inches of rain by the time we get through tomorrow. So 3 to 5 inches. We've got some saturated grounds in this area. So Louisville, St. Louis, Springfield, you could all pick up some additional inches of rain here as the next couple of days goes on. So reminding folks not to drive through those flooded roadways. That's a concern that we have through the next 2 days at least. Severe risk, not quite as large as it was yesterday, but still, again, Springfield to Evansville, that's where you could see some of those stronger storms ramping up. Wind gusts, hail, Joe. Parts of the plains and the northern Rockies will also see that chance as we get through today and even into tonight.
All right, Angie, thank you so much.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.